What's up, and welcome to That's Enough, the show all about the sports topics that we can stop talking about. He's Steve Hofstetter, I'm Mike Janella. And Steve, I don't know what you had at the over-under, but second episode, we're already getting into politics. I'm surprised it took us this long.
Well, I'm surprised that this is your topic that's pulling us there and not mine, but it's one that once you suggested it, I was like, oh, bring it on. I am happy to talk about this.
All right. So before you hit stop, or you're like, I'm skipping this episode, or you unsubscribe after subscribing to us just 1 week ago, look, I think this is going to be hopefully a little bit of a different conversation than you're used to when it comes to politics and sports. And obviously, if you know Steve, if you follow him from his comedy, you know where he stands and all these kind of issues. And it wasn't like our choice or decision, I think, Steve, to have politics seep into this show in general. We're trying to keep it as sports centric as possible. But I feel like nowadays it's almost impossible. There's going to be stories that come up because everything is so intertwined now that we really can't avoid it. So hopefully we won't be like you're listening to a show on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever. I think we'll try and have our version of that.
I don't think we will, but let's talk Ovechkin.
Yeah. So there were two things that got me thinking about this week. The one was Alex Ovechkin breaking Wayne Gretzky's goal record in the NHL, and the other was Mookie Betts and the rest of the Dodgers taking their trip to the White House. And the thing I've had enough of, and because that's the whole point of this show, like that's enough. People who still act shocked or act betrayed or have all these different surprising, shocking feelings when it turns out the team they love or the athlete they admire don't agree with them politically or socio-economically or ideologically. And with Alex Ovechkin, he's this goofy, amazing, he eats Cheetos and pizza in his pregame workout, and he drinks out of the Stanley Cup when they win it, partying guy, but also is like very supportive of Vladimir Putin and that regime. That's there. They have, I think it's still his Instagram profile pictures, the two of them together. And obviously Russia these days, persona non grata on a global scale. So to me, it's just like, how are you still this surprised that somebody this prominent, this lovable, this marketable might have issues like this? And I feel like, I don't know about you, does any of this ever shock you still when these kind of things happen?
No, partly because I was doing a podcast for about a year where I was interviewing former major league players. And so most of the guys I was interviewing were like guys who played in the 70s and 80s. And boy, are they right wing. Like so many of them, and posting like the most baseless conspiracy theory memes. And then every now and then I would run across a guy like Dave Magadan who's like left of left, and I was like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. But the thing that I don't understand on this is, because I am not someone who separates the art from the artist. But the thing that I don't understand is the people who think they have to like everyone on their team. And you don't. You don't have to like everyone on your team. And sometimes for other reasons. Like, people did not have to like Jonathan Papelbon because he was a maniac. Like, there are reasons beyond politics, beyond personal life, that you can just be like, oh yeah, this guy's an idiot. I have no desire to like this idiot. Would I like them to do well for my team? Sure. As a Mets fan, I really did not like Daniel Murphy. I didn't like Daniel Murphy because of his homophobic comments. And I thought that was awful and irresponsible. But I do understand that there are going to be players who have that viewpoint who wear the uniform that I am rooting for. And you can separate the art, or sorry, I can't separate the art from the artist, but I can separate the player from the team, if that makes sense.
That's where, I mean, the whole phrase separate art from the artist comes from things like music, movies, right? And I think team sports at least, presents to me at least like an ethical, like philosophical dilemma. Because if you don't like what Kanye West has done or Kevin Spacey, there's thousands of other artists, musicians, there's thousands of other actors in movies, and you can just say, I'm never going to watch a Kevin Spacey movie again. And that's okay. Individual sports, if you don't like, Novak Djokovic's stance on vaccines, you can say, you know what, I'm a Carlos Alcaraz guy now. I'm never rooting for Novak Djokovic again. Yeah. But if a guy on your favorite team votes for someone you don't vote for or say something you don't agree with, what are you going to do? If that
Well,
guy comes up and hits the 3-run homer to win you the NLCS or whatever, or hits the buzzer beating shots to win you an NBA title, like how do you separate that?
well,
It's
two
it's
things.
it's
One,
crazy to me.
I mean, movies are a team sport because unless it is something where it is someone's pet project and they're the one doing the whole thing and they're producing it and directing it and that's one thing. But the same way that like I don't like that I don't like what Scientology has done, but I can still watch The Handmaid's Tale even though Elizabeth Moss is the star and is like one of the spokespeople for Scientology these days.
Or we see like every Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise still does $1 billion at the box office. So people obviously not staying away from
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
I do draw the line at a certain point though. And like I used to really like Woody Allen movies and I can't watch those anymore because I know what a monster he is. And so there's a certain I think everybody has a different threshold where they, the same way that like I grew up loving the Cosby Show. And now
Yeah.
clearly I don't even want to watch a rerun, even though so many of the other people in that show are good people. Now, when it comes to sports, because I don't want to make this all about TV and movies, when it comes to sports, like, look, did I like what Daniel Murphy did in the playoffs for the Mets? Yes. Would I rather another player have done it? Would I rather that have been David Wright? Also, yes. You can't control who does what on the team that you are rooting for. There has only been one time in my life as a sports fan, or no, two times, I think, as a sports fan, where someone I genuinely didn't like came to my team. One was I like the White Sox. They're not my favorite team. They're but second favorite. It's been pain the last, couple years. But
Quick tangent. How did that happen? You're a Mets guy primarily, but how do you get the White Sox as a secondary rooting team?
well, as I didn't have any rivalries in the American League. This is, before interleague play was going on, and this was completely separate. I loved Frank Thomas growing up, and then just those teams, the Blackjack and Alex Fernandez, and it was just such a fun team to watch. And Robin Ventura, which when the Mets got him, I was thrilled because that's when one of my favorite players was brought over to my favorite team. That was great.
That was
But
your
when
Venn diagram acquisition right there.
exactly,
Yeah.
but when the White Sox got Albert Bell, I was very torn because I was like, oh, I want them to do well, but I don't want him to do well. And when the Knicks got Latrell Sprewell, same thing. I was like, this guy is a maniac, and I don't want a maniac on my team. Now, those weren't, political affiliations. Those were things that people did, off field, off court, sometimes on field, sometimes on court, depending on which incident. And I was not rooting for those particular players to do well. I wanted my teams to do well despite those players. I would love to have seen Albert Bell go into what Mo Vaughn was for the Mets. The idea of like, sometimes you sign a big player and it doesn't work out. And I would like
Which
to see that
which
happen with a player
which
I don't like.
Yeah, which unfortunately happened with the Mets and pretty much nobody else. Eddie Murray, Bobby Bonilla,
Oh my
Mo
God. How
Vaughn, Jeremy
Bobby
Burnett,
Bonilla
Roberto
drives me.
Alomar. The list goes on. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that something we have to remember is you do not have to like every player on your favorite team. And you can dislike them for any reason, the same way that like you can like part of why I liked Robin Ventura was because that stupid Nolan Ryan fight. Like
Yeah.
I thought that was so funny. And I was just like, that guy's got moxie. All right. I mean, he just got his butt kicked by someone who was like 15 years older than him and showed up to work the next day with no problem. I like that guy. That's a silly reason to like a player.
Right.
So the same way that you can have silly reasons to like a player, you can have any reason you want to dislike a player, and they can be on your team.
Look, we try and keep these under 15 minutes. We also promise you, though, fake ad reads every episode. So let's sneak one in here before we get to my rebuttal to this. This week, this is inspired by, this was an idea you had and inspired by me here at home with my wife as we're building baby furniture. Here is not an ad, very important for legal purposes, from a brand that does not sponsor us, IKEA. Now with contact information for locals couples counselors included with each instruction manual. Because do you want to buy furniture but also get a divorce? When you want to put something together while separating yourselves, IKEA. This wasn't an ad, but it could be. Write it for us. We can say whatever you want. Reach out to us at that'senoughshow@gmail.com. Back to the show.
Yeah. But
Um,
I do want to say also, in between the idea for that and that ad read, I did buy like an IKEA china cabinet for my new place. And boy, am I going back to IKEA to replace the two
yeah.
pieces that came broken. So
I can
yeah,
imagine. Resounding non-endorsement again. So, and I think the reason we're here is twofold because, again, politics now, it used to be just politics. These people are here. We elected them. They're here to serve us, and that's it. And now it's
yeah.
become this, this, I don't even know what to call them, like this
It's
idolatry
identity,
of people. Yeah.
identity politics.
Yeah. And now the second thing is that we have more access, whether we like it or not, to players than ever before. Like in 1988, you would have no idea who Bo Jackson was voting for in the presidential election, right? Unless somebody asked him or he was at a fundraiser or something for a candidate. Nowadays, a guy can just get off on Twitter. They can snap a picture on Instagram with their preferred candidate, post a meme or whatever. And you have all this information that you didn't, used to. So I'm wondering, and to bring it back to one of the inspirations with the Dodgers visiting the White House this week,
Yeah.
Mookie Betts did not go there with the Red Sox the last time Donald Trump was in the White House. And then he went back this time with the Dodgers. And his quote was when they asked him why the change, he said, "This comes with the territory. Being black in America in a situation like this, a tough spot to be in. No matter what I choose, somebody's going to be pissed. This is not about me. This is not about politics. This is about the Dodgers and my loyalty to these boys in the clubhouse." Then you have his teammate, Blake Treinen, who is a relief pitcher for them, and he skipped the Dodgers visit when Joe Biden was in the White House. This time he went and he said, quote, "I'm pumped. The greatest president of my lifetime. Excited to meet him, shake his hand, thank him for what he's doing." And so you have these two things that maybe we wouldn't have known about this 30 years ago. And so I'm wondering, Steve, because politics has bled into so many different parts of our lives, and because you are going to know about these athletes on a personal level, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not, are the only two choices really to be a sports fan in 2025 to either be naive and kind of go with this ignorance is bliss and just say, hey, whatever's outside the lines is outside the lines? Or do you have to learn to be a bit more separate art from the artist and live with that choice? Like, man, I don't believe what that guy stands for at all, but man, can he throw a slider? Like, are those the only two options we have?
I think that I think I'm the third option, which is pick and choose who on your team you like, and I think that that's fine to do. And we also have to remember that like some athletes are very smart, but for every Dave Cone, for every Dave Cone, there's going to be an Aubrey Huff, and some people are going to be idiots. And I know that like the things that Kurt Schilling has said since retirement has really tainted his legacy for Red Sox fans. There are a lot of Red Sox fans who are like, "Hey, I don't care about the bloody sock. I care about the fact that this guy is horrifically Islamophobic and also stole money from taxpayers." There are plenty of people who look at Brett Favre and just go, "Oh my God, I can't believe he was my quarterback. Like, what an idiot." So there are things that come out about these guys, and whether they are political or terrible sexual harassment, again, Brett Favre. There are things that happen with these guys that you have to decide: is this okay for me to root for? Is it okay to can you convince yourself that Aroldis Chapman is fine to root for despite what he's done in his personal life? And you have to make those decisions. And I know we got to wrap it up, and this is going to be a heated one in the comment section. My belief is you pick and choose on who on your team you're rooting for.
And I think it's a skill we're all getting good at. I've had years of experience as a WWE fan. Vince McMahon, turns out, terrible person. And we kind of knew that the entire time. But there are people in that company and wrestlers and real life people that you root for and you like. And it just, yeah, you have to learn to deal with the stuff you don't like, extra enjoy the stuff that you do. And when someone like a David Cohn or a Dave Magadan or Mark Canna for Mets fans comes along that maybe idealizes with you on one side, or if you are a Blake Trinan, MAGA person, and there's that on that side, you enjoy the people you do enjoy, and hopefully the sports can still sort of find us some common ground more times than not. All right, Steve, we got a jet. This was a tough one to squeeze into 15 minutes. Maybe we'll come back to this some other time.
Yeah, we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, there you go. All right, guys, we are done. That's enough.